another episode of People, Place, and Purpose, the show where we hear stories from business owners, creators, and entrepreneurs about how they got started, what they love most, what challenges them, where they've had to pivot, learn, change, how relationships and networking have helped along the way, and ultimately, how they turn their passion into a successful venture and are living a life they love. I'm your host, Kate Lusko. I love to travel, eat delicious food, and meet and get to know cool people, and I'm so glad you're here today. Let's jump in. Kate Fosson is the co-founder and brand hunter of Brand Pollinators, whose mission is inspiring purpose-driven brands to achieve sustainable excellence through values-driven consulting, relevant resource sharing, and high-impact networking. Her life as a military spouse includes moving to another part of the country about every 2 years, and in some ways, entrepreneurship found her as a means to find continuity in her professional life through those geographic changes. I love the values that Brand Pollinators embodies, but I also really enjoyed the time we spent talking about community, balance in our lives, learning about ourselves, and how we each choose to spend our 24 hours per day. And really need to take the time myself for that exercise you'll hear us talk about. With that, let's get to today's episode. Well, welcome, Kate. Thank you so much for being here this afternoon with me.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
So it's always fun with stories like this. We grew up together, but we lost touch at some point. And so I'm really interested to hear your story kind of from when I knew you forward. So can you tell us where you're from originally and then what your path has looked like up until today? And then we'll move into what you're doing now.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, we went to like elementary school together and a lot has happened since then. It's so crazy. I just like did not keep in touch with anybody from who we grew up with. So yeah, it's been a long journey, but grew up in New Hampshire and I ended up graduating from University of New Hampshire. And so after that, I moved out to, I worked for a company locally for about a year, and then I moved out to Seattle. And I just kind of did that sort of on a whim. I had been working like in a cubicle, and that really was hard for me. It was not, it wasn't a good fit. And so I had to get out of there. And I was like, okay, what's the farthest away I can go? And I had a 2-week vacation to use, and I flew to Bolivia, and I did like this Habitat for Humanity trip. And I went with a bunch of people I didn't know, and I just like moved rocks around for like a week. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. So when I finally got back, I was like, put in my notice, moved to Seattle, and kind of started fresh. And so, I just kind of worked a couple random jobs out there. And then after a couple of years, I ended up meeting my husband, who is in the Navy, and he's actually still active duty. So for the last 15 years or so, I have been moving around the country with him. He gets reassigned about every 2 years. So we have lived pretty much anywhere there's water around the country. And so that's been really interesting because that has really affected my career, the moving mostly, but we have 2 kids now. And so trying to be flexible with my career because, his is not very flexible. So we've had to adapt to that, but it's been really fun. So I ended up doing my MBA during one of our tours when we were in DC. And then I've been working with, so I started my own web design company several years ago. And then I've ended up working with a lot of different entrepreneurs along the way. So since getting my MBA, I've opened a marketing consultancy with a partner. And so we work with emerging brands specifically, and we provide marketing support, fundamental like strategy stuff for emerging brands. And they're all purpose-driven companies. So that's really fun. I get to talk to so many cool founders every day. And then, I get to bring my work with me whenever we move around. So, yeah.
And did you have a favorite spot in all of those moves?
Oh, man. I think Monterey, California. Yeah. Monterey was pretty awesome.
And where are you now?
San Diego. Well, we're in Ventura, and we're headed to San Diego next. So we're going to be kind of California family for a while here.
I love San Diego. Back after graduating from college, one of my girlfriends and I were going to move out to San Diego, but it was 2008. And so really tough economic times. And, coming from college, you don't have experience. And so I ended up buying a house in New Hampshire and she's now out in Colorado, plans changed. But I think about that sometimes, like how different would life have been if I had ended up in California? Beautiful, so beautiful.
Yeah, we really love it out here, but it's kind of cool when we move around a lot. We get to sort of be locals in different places for a little while, and everywhere has something. We lived in Mississippi for a couple years, and it wasn't my favorite place, but there's still so much beauty there, and there's some really good food, and you get to learn about the local cultures. And I mean, Mardi Gras, like there were parades every day for a week. All the different little towns along the coast would have parades and stuff. So there's always something wherever you go.
Well, and I think I have maybe 15-ish states left on my list, and Mississippi is one of them. So I will call you before I go
Nice.
there.
Yeah, definitely go during Mardi Gras season. I
Okay.
would highly recommend.
So how did you meet your business partner?
Oh yeah. So I was working for a small company in South Carolina. We were living there at the time. And I was the director of operations for the company, and we needed a salesperson. And so we started interviewing people for that. And this one person, Channing, who we talked to, as soon as we got her on the phone and started, interviewing, I was like making little hearts in my notebook. I was like, oh, we're going places together. So I just knew right away that we were going to hit it off. And so she came out, we met her, we ended up hiring her, and we worked together at that company for a while. I left because of course we moved again. But Channing and I talked like almost every day, even after we left the company. And she switched to another job since then. But yeah, we just stayed in touch, and we had this idea sort of brewing about what we could do to support emerging brands. And it really came down to marketing for us, because she had worked in sales and marketing, I had worked in operations and branding, and in a small business and in emerging brands, you kind of have to do a little bit of everything. And so we had sort of been like a first hire or a right hand person for an entrepreneur in several different points in both of our careers. And so we could see some of these patterns emerging of things that people kind of often overlooked, and a lot of that was strategic, like foundational elements of their marketing strategy. And yeah, so that was kind of the impetus for starting Brand Pollinators. And then the other element there was that we thought it would really benefit a lot of these founders to connect to each other. And so, that was a big part of what we wanted to do with our consultancy as well, was to be able to kind of be a connection for people in that purpose-driven space, and kind of help founders support each other and collaborate.
When it's interesting you talk about wearing many hats, some of my other guests have almost given that out as a best practice, that especially if you think at some point you'll hire folks, if you've done all the things, it sort of helps you figure out, who's the best person to hire and what you need to share with them to do those things. So it's sort of interesting, when you're small, you really do have to, but that it can actually be a benefit in a lot of ways.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And I think you really understand, you can see where there's inefficiencies, you can see where, you might want to streamline certain processes. And then, like you said, being able to recognize, who might be good for this kind of job. And, a lot of times when you hire somebody early on, you're looking for somebody that can take on a lot of different roles too, because, you can't hire 10 different people to do 10 different and specific things. You want somebody that's going to be kind of flexible and wear a lot of hats too.
Right, for sure. So I love this community aspect, right? Being a connector is one of my favorite things. It's just such a neat opportunity to bring good people together. Can you tell us a little bit about what the community looks like that you've built?
Yeah, for sure. It's been so fun. So we just kind of been reaching out to founders and talking with people who we think would be a good fit. And pretty much everybody that's in our community, we have had a face-to-face, well, virtual, conversation with, so that we can kind of get to know them, understand their business and sort of what their needs are. And then what we've started to do is we've done a monthly community call where it's actually open to anybody. It doesn't have to be somebody that we've talked to, but we bring in usually an expert that can talk on a subject that's relevant for sort of, people that we've talked to. We kind of have them in the back of our mind, like, okay, what's going to be really helpful for you? And so we've done topics like SEO and PR, and let's see, we have one coming up on culture, company culture. So there's, a wide variety of topics, but I think they're all relevant, and we try to focus on the purpose-driven aspect there, of these companies that, they have a strong mission. And so what does that look like when you're doing PR? What does that look like when you're redesigning your packaging? Or how does that translate to logistics? So we've been doing a community call every month, and then we send out an email every weekend. And our email usually has like either a rundown of brands that we've recently added to the community, or we've got some insights on how to get certified, an organic certification or a women-owned business or fair trade. So we try to put really relevant information there. And again, thinking of all these people that we've talked to, just sort of having them in the back of our minds while we're building this content and sending it out there. And we have like a really great success rate with the email. A lot of people tell us that they love it. We have a high open rate with that. So that's something that I think has been really valuable for the community as well.
And I think people have a tendency to think that sort of email is done, like overdone, and nobody pays attention. But I know I find, certainly I get the ones that I delete without opening, right, from stores and things if I'm not in the market, if you will. But there are some people's emails that I read every time they send them, right? Like if it's valuable content and I know it's not just sort of a sales pitch or a sale,
Mhm.
I think it can be really tremendous way to reach a lot of people.
I think so too. And we've leaned into that because, we talked about building a space for our community where people could go and communicate with each other. And, we still will do that at some point. But what it looks like now is like, okay, well, there's already LinkedIn, there's already these other social networks where people can go and do something similar. And then if we created a platform on our own website for that, which we looked at, we priced it out, we thought about building it, but it's like, it would cost more money to do that. And we don't want to, be charging too much for people to be able to participate. But also it's like you're asking someone to go out of their way, sign up for a new thing, get another password, and then actively keep coming back there to engage when they need something. And so I think for us, it's more been like, okay, once a week, we're going to send you, this stuff that we think is going to be super relevant. Feel free to call us if you have questions, send us an email back, reach out to these people in this email, whatever works for you. But I think, most people are still using email pretty regularly. And I think it's one of those where you're not asking someone to go somewhere that they're not already going. And you're not, I think SMS is becoming a lot more popular too, but I think that there's more of a boundary there because it just feels like, whoa, you're now like in my phone, like right here. So I think email is kind of like the happy medium for me.
Yeah, it feels a little bit more passive to me. Like sometimes I will
Mhm.
intentionally not text someone because it just feels intrusive in some ways, even
Mhm.
if it's someone, I know if it's after hours or whatever it might be. Do you have stories of clients of yours or community members of yours connecting with each other, whether organically or because you two made the connection for them?
Yeah, for sure. One of your latest episodes, you've got the founders of Outpatch.
Hmm.
So I ran into Outpatch because I was mentoring at Patriot Boot Camp, which is a accelerator sort of a program for military entrepreneurs. So they could be former military veterans or military spouses. The founders of Outpatch both happen to be veterans. So so I met them doing that mentoring, and then they've been a big part of our community since then. I love what they're doing, and because you're New England based, I was like, oh yeah, these guys will be a good connection. So that kind of stuff happens all the time. We've got sort of a mix of like brands, but then we also have some sort of service providers. So whether it's somebody who designs packaging or, somebody who's doing podcasting, and then that way it makes for, I think, a good balance between, and of course we always like try to vet people that are in our community and make sure that they're not really like spamming the group or anything like that. But I think it makes for a good balance of like, I want to be on more podcasts, and, if everyone in our community was just a founder of, a CPG brand, then there's only so much collaboration that can happen there. But because we're focused on that purpose-driven aspect, then it's like across industries, things can connect. So the podcasting has been a big one. And then I'm trying to think. So we just actually went to the Natural Products Expo in Anaheim. It's like one of the largest expos and industry events in the country, but huge event. And it was just so fun to see these people in person who we've talked to, and be able to make those connections and introduce them to each other and stuff. So that was really cool too.
And so how have you decided who you take on as clients, sort of both when you set out to do this, but then, if someone comes in, how do you actually determine if they're a good fit?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, there's kind of this like list of criteria where it's like they don't have to check all the boxes, but I want to see like 3 out of 5 kind of things. So most of the companies there's a founder element there where it's somebody who's either a veteran or women owned or minority owned. Usually if it's a product, I like to see that it's organic or regenerative or upcycled, something that's, better for the environment. If it's a packaged product, that the packaging is recycled or biodegradable or compostable, something like that. So there's just kind of this list that I sort of check against. It's like, okay, well, if they've got at least 3 of the things on the list, then I feel like that they're working on a plane where there's a lot of different elements of their company that they're considering in terms of their impact. So a lot of these end up being B Corps too, because that certification really looks more deeply at all those different aspects. For us, we're not vetting that they have specific certifications or anything, because I think, we're here to help if people want to make a bigger impact too, and become more sustainable in their practices. It could be that they're looking to get certified organic and they're trying to figure out where to go. And so maybe we can connect them with another brand that's done that process before. But we have talked to some people in the past who, after having a conversation, we talked to somebody once that was, just like super gung-ho, wanted to fail fast and, build this big machine that was like, it had a great purpose behind it, but it was just like, it seemed really kind of aggressive to me, and it just wasn't quite the right vibe for us. And not to say that it wasn't going to be successful or anything. It was just like, that's not quite what we're doing here. We're more about collaboration. And I think a lot of the founders in our community are bootstrapping, and it's just a little bit more organic growth rather than kind of jumping on a trend and like running as fast as you can sort of thing.
That's so interesting. And those can be kind of tricky conversations to navigate, but it really, it makes such a big difference that you know what your focus is and know who your ideal client is, and, that things sort of fall in line with that. I studied business in college, but with a concentration in sustainable business. And so I used to go to a lot of events around sustainability. And I distinctly remember because Stonyfield yogurt was created in New Hampshire, and Gary Hirschberg, the founder, used to talk about, and this was, 20 years ago, used to talk about 15 years ago, how his dream was to make a yogurt cup that after people ate the yogurt, they could eat the cup itself. And I actually just saw something a week or two ago about like silverware that it wasn't silver, but utensils that you could use and then eat afterwards. And it just, it's just amazing the things that people are able to do in that space and how they're able to be creative and reuse and, use things for different purposes. Just absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I actually ran into those guys. So I'm connected with the founder of a company called Incredible, and I saw them at Expo. And yeah, they have different flavored like spoons and sporks and chopsticks that you can eat. And it's just so cool because I think that single use waste is just getting really out of control, and that's one of the things that a lot of the brands in our network are combating, whether it's through the packaging or, basically packaging is the issue. So, they have a bunch of different ways of solving that problem. But it's so cool to be able to kind of hear how different people are going about it. And then kind of they can help each other sort of figure out, what the best way is. I found this actually I have one right here, this company at Expo 2 called OTs. And I think they're based in Canada, but the plastic wrapper is actually not plastic, it's plant-based, so it will biodegrade. And then the actual tea bag is also plant-based, and of course the tea. So like every single thing in there will like compost in your home compost, which is so cool.
Yeah, that's really neat. So in addition to the business piece, you're a SCORE mentor. Would you talk about what SCORE even is? Because some of our listeners may not know. Such a great concept.
Yes, SCORE is amazing. If you are building a business, you should definitely check out the SCORE program. They have chapters all around the country. It's affiliated with the Small Business Association. And it's kind of funny because I don't know as though it's an acronym anymore. It used to be an acronym for like something retired executives. Yeah. And so when I knew about the program, I was like, oh, I should like volunteer with these guys and see how I can help in my community when we were in South Carolina. And so I went to volunteer, and I walked into the office, and they had the old sign hanging up that said something about retired executives. And I was like, ooh, I don't know if this is right for me. I think I might be too young. But no, they were really excited to have me because they're trying to get away from that identity that they first started with, which was the retired executives. And now they're they're mentors. It's a mentoring program. So they want to have a diverse group of mentors, not just retired executives. So a lot of them still are retired because, that's who has time to be mentoring. But it's such a great program, and they have just a wealth of knowledge, and it's free. There's chapters in most local towns around the country, and you can go and sign up for a mentor, and they have usually workshops, and they have a lot of online resources as well. So definitely.
And I think I've seen you can sort of search by location, or you can search by specialty, right? So especially these days with so many things switching to Zoom, I'm sure it doesn't necessarily have to be geographically convenient, but could be someone that has a background in whatever it is that you're looking for. Such a great resource. So I'm curious, when you think back over your career, what have been kind of those pivotal moments? Do you remember those times something happened where it felt like it was leading you towards something or telling you something, like things that kind of brought you to where you are?
Yeah, I mean, from what I mentioned earlier about, just kind of my career path, like leaving, taking this trip to Bolivia, and just kind of opening my eyes to a new perspective, because I had been working in a cubicle, and I was a procurement analyst. So I was buying product for grocery, and I was buying like truckloads of toilet paper, candy, like cereal, you name it. And it just felt a little bit off to me because, here I am talking about reducing single-use products, and I'm like buying truckloads of toilet paper. So I just sort of knew that it didn't really align with my values in that way. And moving out to Seattle and kind of breaking away from that really changed a lot for me. And then, yeah, like having to adjust to life as a military spouse, I think made a huge impact on my career because, because we do move often, it was just going to be too much for me to try to start to find a job every time we moved to a new place. I mean, I did that once and I just started thinking down the road and I was like, man, it took me maybe 8 months to find a job the first time we moved. And then I worked there for 12 months and then I had to put in my notice. And I was like, I can't do this every time. And so that's when I actually went to get certified as a web designer and developer. And I started my own web design company because I thought, this seems like something that would be fun. I always wanted to try it. And I really loved like organizing information and design work. So I thought, okay, this will be really cool. And then I knew I had to figure out how to actually build the websites too, because the small businesses aren't going to just hire a designer. They need to actually have the website built. So I started my own company doing that. And I think I didn't really advertise. I just kind of, it was all word of mouth. I was always busy. I could work from wherever I was. And I got some really cool opportunities. I ended up becoming actually the COO of one of the companies that had hired me to do web design for them. So yeah, I think those are just kind of some of the key times when yeah, it just really affected the trajectory a lot.
And what else? I mean, you co-founded this company, you're a SCORE mentor, you're a mom, you're a military spouse. What else is sort of on your bucket list, or how else do you spend your time? And that's a
Oh,
lot, but I'm
yeah,
sure there's,
yeah, for
you're a
sure.
runner,
No,
right? Runner.
I did my MBA when I had a 9-month-old at home and I got pregnant right after I started the program. So I had 2 kids during my MBA program. But I definitely want to go for a PhD. I mean, I love school, I love research, I love learning. And so I definitely want to do that. That's on my bucket list. We have been asking to move overseas, which has not happened yet. I would love to be able to do that. But yeah, I mean, I'm just really excited to continue to grow this community that we've started to build, and yeah, just kind of be able to expand on what we've started and see where it goes.
Yeah, that's amazing. And how do you spend your free time?
Oh my
You're a
gosh.
runner. And I know you said something, I think, on your website about like food, loving all
Oh
aspects of food, which
yeah.
I can totally relate to.
Yes, yes. So now that we're in California, I get to mountain bike all the time, which is like one of
Yeah.
my favorite things to do.
Yeah.
So I do run and mountain bike, and take my kids around to do all kinds of fun stuff that they like to do. We do a lot of crafts and yeah, cooking. I love cooking, baking. Yeah, I have a ton of hobbies, and I'm also pretty active with like the local spouse club for the military base too, because it's just such a powerful community, and I love being able to give back to it and to support military spouses, and also get support for myself, being able to socialize with people. And we're talking about moving right now, and every single one of us has been there before. And some people have lived in the places that you're going and have tips for how to pack or what to do with your dog or whatever. And so it's such a great community. So I love being a part of that too.
I remember back when I was at Stay Work Play up in the Dartmouth area of New Hampshire, there's both a hospital and a school. And so there were a couple of organizations that had these initiatives about trailing spouses, is what they called them, because, doctors would get relocated or someone would come to go to school at Dartmouth, and, their spouse would sort of, like, the one who was there for the purpose was plugged into a network, whether at the school or the hospital. And then the spouse sort of had to find a job and a social life and maybe connect with other parents. Such a neat opportunity to create that community for that other person to get plugged in.
Oh yeah. And that's, I think, has been a real saving grace for me, like I really enjoy, the military family life because we get to live in different places, and we get to experience a lot of different things. But I think it would be extremely difficult without that community. I feel like there's this running joke between us where, you show up to a new neighborhood and you walk over to your neighbor's house and you're like, hi, I'm your new neighbor. What's your phone number? Will you be my emergency contact? And that's just like, we make fast friends because we have to. We're only somewhere for usually 2 years at a time. And so in that time, it's like if you spend the whole time thinking, oh, I wish we lived in a different place, or I don't know anybody and I don't know how to get started, you waste the whole time just kind of floundering. So I think so many of us have adapted to learn how to make friends quickly and get connected to local networks really quickly. And I do fall bad in places like that where you're talking about that there's these trailing spouses that don't have a network, and it can be really isolating because it's a lot of, especially with the military, it's a lot of burden because the active duty service member, may not be available for the times when you're moving. Or even, I know I've had a lot of friends who have given birth while their husband is away. And so, there's like a real need to have that support network available.
Yeah, it's so neat. All the communities that you're a part of. Pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm always seeing connections in my mind too. So yeah, I love being able to connect people from one to another too.
So with all of those different hats that you wear, who or what inspires you?
That's a good question. I I just love seeing these companies and these brands that have really built something meaningful and have really enjoyed what they're doing. So I was actually just looking. What is this? Let My People Go Surfing. The founder of Patagonia, and just kind of seeing these really cool cultures that some businesses are able to create for people. So yeah, I really look up to people who are building companies like that, and also people who are, I think normalizing the idea that, we're all vulnerable humans, that need connection to each other. I'm actually reading Brene Brown's latest book right now, and I subscribe to like James Clear and some of these thought leaders in the space. So yeah, I take a lot of inspiration from them as well.
That's so great. So I was perusing your LinkedIn a little bit, and I'm going to read something that you wrote that I thought was really cool, and then ask you to talk a little bit about it.
Oh,
So
okay.
in a post you had written, "Time exists for things that matter. We just have to decide what they are." Can you talk a little bit? I thought that was really impactful.
I don't know what that means. I'm just kidding. Yeah, I think that I think it's so important to learn about yourself and what matters to you. And then I think the answers to what you're looking for come a lot clearer because you understand yourself better. And we actually advise clients on this in terms of like building companies too. It's like when you understand what is at the core of your mission, like why you're doing what you're doing, what your purpose is, then you can use that as kind of a gut check. Like, okay, is this particular task in line with what I want to do in the long run? And is it in line with my mission? And I think that, it makes such a big difference. And so for me, what's been really fun is this process of discovering what is important to me and what matters most to me. And for me, I decided to make a career and a life for myself where I have the flexibility to spend time with my children, because it's like they're only young once, and it's a fleeting amount of time, even though it seems like it's endless. Sometimes they're they're really, it's only a few years, and so to me like making time to spend time with my kids. So in the evening, it's like, oh, will you read a book? Will you do this? Will you do that? And at first, when I had them, I was like, oh, no, it's time for bed, lights out, this kind of thing. And then I started thinking more about it, and I was like, when are they going to ask me to do this again?
Mm.
Like this is the time when it matters. This is the kind of thing they're going to remember. And so that's kind of what I mean by making time for things that matter. And then also kind of discovering like things for self-care too. Running, meditating, writing, like all of these things that can be really healing, to make sure that I am prioritizing that kind of thing so that I can, be my best every day and feel my best. So I think hopefully that explains it a little bit more.
Yeah, I just really liked it. It reminds me a little bit of, and I can't think of what the purpose was, but I feel like back in, I don't know, junior high or high school, for something we had to like document our time for 24 hours. And
Oh,
it just makes me think about, as grownups, if you will, that I think a lot of people will say, these are the things I value. But if they like documented their time for 24 hours, it may not necessarily align with the things that they think that they're valuing. And so I feel like there should be some sort of exercise there to have, grownups do that.
I have one for you. Hold on. This book right here. This is a fabulous, oh, the cover's not on it, but it's called Designing Your Life. And it's by Bill Burnett. And it's so great. It actually does have an exercise like that where you map out all your time. And then one thing that I thought was really cool about it is that they talk about how you balance your time. So some things you just have to do, but they're kind of an energy suck. And so it's like, okay, balance your day with doing something that gives you energy, to then going to something that like some kind of meeting or something that's going to suck your energy, to then giving yourself the thing that's going to bring you energy afterwards. So it's like, okay, if you know that, I just did this recently for myself, like, okay, I know that I feel more creative after I've spent time outside.
Mhm.
And so when I get up in the morning, I'm a morning person. I love being up early. And so I realized, okay, so I want a habit of writing every day. So maybe if I get up early and walk the very first thing, then I go to writing. And that's where it's like, it's fueling that creativity that I've kind of captured from doing the walking, and then bringing it into that next phase. So I think just kind of balancing out the day as it goes with kind of the energy and how you feel is actually pretty valuable.
I would imagine especially for startups, like the companies that you work with, it's often so hard, right? People talk about kind of working in their business, working on versus working on their business. And so this seems like it would be such valuable work to do, but you have to slow down enough and take the time to kind of take that step back and say like, okay, here's all the things, the must do's, and, to try and create that new structure. It's a little bit of a tricky thing to think about doing, when you're
Yeah.
kind of in the thick of it.
Yeah, and I will say that, I think that this kind of hustle culture gets glorified. And I think that there are a lot of founders and famous entrepreneurs who push really, really hard. But honestly, I think these guys are kind of freaks of nature. Like you look at Steve Jobs or Elon Musk, and it's like, not everybody's like that. Most people need a lot more than 3 hours of sleep or whatever, and some people don't. And I think that that's where some of those, huge, huge famous entrepreneurs have kind of gained something, is because they are very obsessive, and they're willing to forego a lot in order to push forward. But if you look at how many millions of businesses exist and how many millions of founders there are out there, not everybody can act like that. And for most people, that's like a sure path to burnout. And so I think that that's one of the things that I've been focused on, is like, you know, as you're building a business, you also have to be taking care of yourself, because I've
Mhm.
seen so many people get really sick. Honestly, like people that I've worked closely with get really sick because they were pushing themselves so hard. And just happened to a client of ours the other day, and it's just like they have to like step back and turn things off because they can't anymore. They're in the hospital, And so I think that it gets glorified because some very few very famous people are able to pull it off. But I think people can be really successful even without pushing themselves to the absolute limit in that one arena. I think that there's a way to do it and still stay balanced in your life, and that makes it so much more enjoyable, in my opinion.
Well, and offline, you had talked a little bit about consistency, which I think plays into what you just said. So, good time to ask, what is your advice for, folks that you work with or folks who are listening who are thinking about starting something or maybe doing something on the side? What do you have advice for those kind of wannabe or startup entrepreneurs?
Yeah. So I actually just recorded a session yesterday for a high school entrepreneurship course. And one of the things that I said is like, start with the problem, like define what that problem is that you want to solve and be really clear, in that mission that you have to solve the problem. And I think that that's just, it's so important. And that's why we, built Brand Pollinators the way we did, is focusing on those foundational elements of like really knowing why you're there and knowing your purpose. And it gives you a place to kind of check back in, and keep following along, and stay true to that so that you don't get caught up. Like, even, we just went to this expo, and there's like, I don't even know how many, like tens of thousands of brands exhibiting there, and they're all in the natural food, mostly food, but natural product industry. And so it's like so cool to see some of these brands that are making these really interesting things, and then I go to look closer at it, and it's like, oh well, it's actually not organic ingredients, and it's a plastic package. And it's just like, it's supposedly something innovative, and they've done something that looks cool, and it's like a pretty package. But I look at that checklist that I was telling you about, that I sort of have in my mind. I'm like, okay, well, you're not really checking a lot of the boxes. But I think it's easy to sort of get distracted by things that look good or sound good, and then you kind of start to lose your way a little bit. So I would highly recommend like being really clear in what your mission is, and kind of, just writing it down and having it available to you all the time so that you can check back with it.
Awesome. That's really great. So, I want you to tell people where they can find Brand Pollinators, but also sort of what you do for companies. You talked a little bit about the community, but what are the other services that you offer?
Yeah, for sure. So I don't know as though we actually have much bandwidth to take on new clients right now, but we do offer um, the strategic marketing that I talked about. So we'll walk through like a brand guide to help solidify all those elements, and then also include a lot of information about or examples kind of about voice and look and feel kind of things. And that can help inform your social media strategy and kind of, a lot of the other marketing efforts that you're putting forward. And then we can also help with setting up sort of like a content strategy for, communicating your message. So that's kind of the main things that we do. We also do like some copywriting and things like that. We try to be, as all encompassing as possible when it comes to marketing, because we know that, you probably don't have a very big team, and it's just like, we don't want to recommend, oh yeah, you should do this, and then kind of walk away and be like, good luck finding the resources to do that. So yeah, that's kind of what we've been working on mostly. One of our clients, actually, we just helped them launch a new website. So that was really cool to kind of help solidify their position and make their messaging a lot more clear. And then, yeah, the community is, anybody can sign up for the emails on our website. Our website's just brandpollinators.com. And anybody can join our community calls. We have one coming up. It's on LinkedIn. And our LinkedIn is Brand Pollinators, or you can find me there as well. Kate Fosson. On Instagram, we're at Brand Pollinators, or if you want, just shoot me an email. It's kate@brandpollinators.com.
Awesome. Very simple. So anything else I didn't ask you about, or any last words of wisdom you want to share?
No, I really appreciate what you're doing. It seems like you're having some great conversations on your podcast, and I look forward to continue to follow that journey. And obviously, please let me know if there's anything I can do to help, or if you have anybody on that has specific questions I might be able to help with.
Fantastic. Thank you. This was so great. It was nice to see you and to talk
Yeah.
with you and sort of bridge that gap of elementary school to now.
I know, for sure. It's been a long time, but I love that we're both like doing something fun and able to reconnect.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
That sentiment that Kate shared, time exists for things that matter. We just have to decide what they are, really resonated with me. How are you choosing to spend your time? On to the takeaways from today's episode. Everywhere has something, be it a geographic place, a new company, or a new-to-you industry. Embrace being the newbie. Take the time to pay attention to what you value, and then find alignment of your work through those values. Find your communities. There's tremendous importance in being around people who understand where you are and what you're experiencing. Start with the problem you're trying to solve, your purpose. That will give you a place to continuously check back into. And discover opportunities to learn about yourself and what truly matters to you. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of People, Place, and Purpose. Please remember to subscribe, rate, review, and leave a comment. As a new podcast, your support really means a lot. And if you know someone who might be inspired by this story, please share it with them. I would also love to engage with you directly, so please find us on Instagram at People, Place, Purpose. I'm so excited for us to continue to learn and grow and discover new things together, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Until then, it's a beautiful day for an adventure. Get out there and explore.